I'm going to talk about three things. First, a little bit my art practice, then about a book, and then in the end about how to save the planet. Right? Okay. So, when I was a boy, 17 years old, this publication came out. I don't know if any one of you have ever heard about it. It has changed my life. It was what they call the Club of Rome, and in already 1972 they came up with this publication based upon the logic of we are running out of resources. It was a big thing, at least in the Netherlands, and they made really clear that if we just continue, at that time, we will get in trouble. So somehow we have to change our minds. Well, it was on my mind when I was a student, although not as much as it over the years. One of the things what I was trying to do from the beginning is to find out about what kind of ceramics works for me, but also in relation to how to keep things, let's say, don't use more energy than needed. So I tried low firing, mid firing, and of course I was also at a certain point involved with more functional work. And I said, well, cone 10 is very high, let's go to cone 9. And it worked quite well. So I was quite proud of myself, I'm saying. So these are some student works. By the way, this was my really first sort of experience with dealing with ceramics as a very specific medium. One of the first class we had, you had to take some clay, and I think the organizers already knew how to do it because it's ready here. So take it, throw it on the ground, and then do something with it. So a very intuitive way of working, which opened up my mind. And from there on, I really got involved. But I also was trying to find out, are glazes necessary? What does a glaze add to the meaning? Or is it just to make it nicer? One of the things we did, I went, by the way, to two schools. First, school for art teachers, because my parents did not like the idea for me to become an artist, because that's sort of stupid, economically speaking. So I went first to study to become an art teacher. And our art ceramic teacher had a brilliant idea. You make your own kiln by just modeling. Model your own kiln, make a double wall, fill it with vermiculite, it's a very good insulating material, close it, and then make it in 3 rings, and then you have a ring kiln, right? But then an updraft kiln. Just put some wood underneath and the flames go all the way up. It did not work perfectly because I could not reach really much more than 1000 degrees Celsius. So I reconstructed a vacuum cleaner and allow a lot of air to go in, and then whoosh, the magic happened. Anyway, so one of the discussions we had in the school, in the academy, after I went to an academy to really go for ceramics, is it oil, gas or electric? At that time, electric was actually not an alternative because electricity was very much linked to electric power plants based upon coal. So that was sort of the worst thing you could do. So oil was a big issue because of the oil crisis. So gas was the most logical thing, but still there was a lot of discussion. Building your own kiln or having a very advanced kiln, a lot of control or little control, how much energy. Well, we had one teacher who was sort of, forget about control, just allow things to happen. And well, how much? This is maybe 20 guilders, let's say 10 euros. If I sell one piece, I can have 20 firings, so why does it matter, right? So, and others were very much, no, we should be very much energy efficient, and we should have a lot of control, so you don't have a lot of things wasted. In the end, the control and energy efficiency won. And I'm talking about 77. Because we had this type of kiln with oil burners, and that's how we tried to create a reduction firing. We had, of course, electric kilns, and we had, finally, after a lot of discussion, we got this kiln. Well, not this kiln, because I just found it on the internet, because I have no pictures from that in those days. But it's what's called a pyroclave. It was a Dutch company who were creating very high, very well insulated, blanket insulated kilns with high velocity burners. A lot of power, but rather even a temperature I call it distribution, and it was very well controlled. So this was, and then the reason why I was able to make this piece, because I was totally in love with celadon, and not just celadon, a long quang celadon, very sort of this fatty, deep quality. Took me 3 years to find out, but then I was able to really get the right color and the right surface quality. As a result of this kiln, I started to find out what would be my kiln when I started my own studio. And it happened to be that at that time a new teacher arrived at the last year of my of the academy, and it was Gerard Blauw. I don't know if it rings any bell. Gerard Blauw was, in the end, the founder of the Blauw kilns. And he had made his own kiln and made a kiln for a friend of his, and he said, I can make your kiln, but I don't have a studio, so you help me, and we have to find a place, and you can help me. And so I could get a very cheap, very energy efficient kiln like that, because it was a copy of the pyroclave. And finally, he got very much involved, and I was able to buy a piece, a kiln at the Ceramic Work Center, which later would become the European Ceramic Work Center, where we then could buy many of those kilns, because it was so advanced. So we got a grant to buy a lot of those big kilns, so the industry, Dutch industry, would sort of get motivated, so they could come and could check how it works. And it was, I call it, research was done. It was 7 times more energy efficient than an average comparable kiln. So that was quite interesting. And later, he developed a computer system, so it could be totally computerized. And this is a picture of a kiln in my studio, a later kiln. So it's not the first one, but this is the more advanced version. In the beginning, I was very much involved with very low temperatures. So energy as possible, as little energy as possible. Just engobes or slips, applying by brush. So I did not need a spray booth or any other stuff, and once firing. And things like this came out. I'm always very interested in painting. Painting was my background, actually. And this is, this is burnished. So with a brush, slip, and then burnishing. So you see that there's gloss there, but it's pure burnishing. Okay. So the whole issue of control or not control, that was already a discussion in the academy, and it has been very much in my mind from the beginning. Because if you start with clay, somehow control is never really possible. A lot of things happening which are out of control, but still intuitive way of working and control, how much can it somehow be side by side without interrupting each other. So I start to use a lot of molds, it gives a lot of control. I start to use tergilata, which gives a lot of control. It's just a quality, if you apply it on a raw piece, it's shiny by itself, and you fire it and the shine is there. You don't have to worry about melting or whatever. So it was very much, then making, firing, and then making again, combining. So it's not just making and then comes out of the kiln, I don't like it, end of the story. No, you can continue. Using other materials, found materials, recycling my work, my own pieces. And one of the things I was always intrigued by larger size pieces. Well, and at a certain point it was clear, just by combining a lot of small pieces, I can make huge pieces. There's no limit, right? These are some examples. It's clay, very much clay-based glaze, just brushed on raw clay, porcelain in this case, fired around cone 7, it's 1225, just brush on. So I developed a system, I never do bisque, never, always just once firing. And if the glaze has a lot of clay, there's no problem. And I always add some CMC, so glue. And if glaze has hardly any clay, I just increase bentonite. And then any clay will work. There's no problem there. So twice firing is not necessary. Except if you have extremely fragile pieces, so you can hardly handle it, then bisque firing makes sense. These are examples of the same thing, and it shows how I deal with molds, starting to combine things. Oh, this is a very early piece. All the parts are tergilatas put on top. It's not a very good picture, but it's one of the first pieces where I start to use tergilata. And this is a later piece, and here you see a little bit better. So it has a certain kind of quality. The shine is very subtle. It's not like the harsh shine of a glaze, and the shadows are more deeper. It's very much the quality of the Dutch Golden Age paintings, which these works somehow are referring to. But I also use just unfired clay. So why firing? It's not always necessary. Unfired clay has its own quality. In this case, I created a landscape. So it's about eye height, and it was on the pallets. And of course, it shrinks, or it cracks, so you get very much the quality of a landscape. Or in this case, a piece which is combined with wet clay, and the clay dries, because this was outside, it was in a building, but there was no roof anymore, because they're all ruined. And the clay dries, and then the rain comes, and the clay gets wet again and flushes away. So it is a piece which keeps on changing while being exhibited. And here you see the clay is gradually just moving and flowing down. Recycling work, yeah. So what I do is actually just combining. So I make things, and sometimes I make things and then later they don't work. So I have a leftover piece. The combination does not work. Then I just let it be, and maybe over time I can use it. Sometimes I use pieces which I've made 20 years ago. Sometimes just a half a year ago. So, and the making as such, sometimes I make a piece in 3 seconds, sometimes it takes 3 years. That's the process what I try to embrace. And this is one of the first times I really consciously say I want to have 2 separate parts which were not part of one piece in the beginning, and I want to have it together. But you all are very intelligent, I'm not, so I was really trying to have this pipe on a round sphere, and the sphere is rolling, right? But I was so stubborn, it should be. So the only way to make it stable is taking some clay and pushing it somewhere, not yet stable, pushing somewhere a little more clay, and gradually it was able to stand. So I could stand back. And then I realized I had created a new piece in the sense that the unfired parts are very, very not only needed, but also visually very, very important. And it's sort of a metaphor. The least interesting in the sense of form are the most important. As a result of this, I say, now I can work in space. Just take some pieces I have left over, take some clay, pop, 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 boom. Magic. By the way, I fire these parts, so they don't really fit exactly, but you can really sense that it once has fitted, and that's part of the piece as well. And this is part of my storage. So all the things somehow who might end up in a piece, or has been part of a piece, and then taken out again and reassembled. So I keep on reusing work. And this is quite an example of that. It's, as you can see here, is a construction. It's in the middle of an old electric power plant somewhere in Belgium. And I was able to make an exhibition there. And there are many lines, as you might see. And each piece has one line, and on top of each there is a nail. See? Which sort of pointing at each piece. The piece is called Descartes' error. It's very much about a grid and about understanding reality. It should fit in our systems, right? And these are all pieces, some of my pieces, a few pieces of my late wife, but a lot of things she has gathered over the years. So it's sort of very much linked to my wife. And very much about that emotion, feeling, and body are totally connected, and not like Descartes' idea of that they are very separated. This is the later version of the same theme. And again, using existing parts and some of the pieces I just created specifically for this piece, like this one. And some unfired, unglazed, tergigillata, glaze, all kinds of different approaches. This is one of my later pieces I'm still working on. And it's expanding. So there's no limit. I can make it 25 by 25 meters. And this piece really talks about saving the planet. As you can see, there are all kinds of shapes returning over and over again, and this one as well. So it's a chess piece. So it's and it sort of represents the human. There's a head and there's a body, but it's upside down. So it's sort of I call it. It talks about our tendency to reduce reality to a problem, because reality never meets our wishes, right? There's always something wrong, and then we start to solve the fact that it doesn't meet our expectations. So we get involved in problem solving. And as a result of this problem solving, we create new problems we then have to solve. Ecce homo. Look at the human beings. So my idea is to have a plant inside. So there's a plant pot and I put earth in it and I bought a plant, put it in there, and it did not work. I did not like it. So I just waited for a while to see if there's something else would pop up. And yes, something else popped up. Little green plants came out, which was totally unexpected. And after half a year, it's grown this much. And what is very symbolic, it is a weed which was very rare in the Netherlands. Only in the very southern part, south part, where it's warmer, near where walls are, so that the sun is reflecting, so the wheat could grow. And now, as you can see, it just grows everywhere in the Netherlands, and even in my studio. So nature is able to adapt. Okay. Glazes is from the beginning, from this experience of this celadon, it's very important to me. There's almost some mystical relationship with it, but I hardly use it in my own work. But I'm extremely interested by it, and as a result of a working period a teaching job at the Alfred University in 2004, I start to get interested again in this celadon glaze. And this was the picture of the celadon, the first time I saw a celadon piece. It was not exactly this piece, but a similar piece. And that's what blew my mind. This tremendous quality. And this book was very important for me to start the research, which I'm doing now for 9 years, to make the book I'm writing. Chinese glazes from natural wood. And one of the things he talks about is that the Chinese potters were able to create glazes by using the eutectic phenomenon. Specific combinations of oxides which are melt at the lowest possible temperature. Of course, the Chinese potters did not know about it, but they had to use this logic because they could not reach high temperatures. The kilns they could reach high temperatures, relatively speaking, to the rest of the world, extremely high, but it was not high enough to get to cone 9 to cone 10. They could reach about cone 5, 6, 7 max. And they were just mixing stuff, ashes from the firing and clay. And then a glaze starts to appear. And then they were able to use more pure materials. And as a result of reduction, this glaze turned out to be jade-like. That's really pushed the whole system of glaze making. And they were, as a result of that, it started 1500 BC, and almost 2,500 years later, the Song dynasty, then these very high quality glazes were created. But they were relatively low fired. not at all cone 9, 10 or whatever. Just cone 6, 7. Alright? That's interesting, yeah? Yes. Yeah. So, as a result of this, I say, can eutectic mixtures be used as a starting point to develop glazes? Because the knowledge is available. Huge books with phase diagrams, and you have to sort of know how to read those phase diagrams, and then you get recipes. So much alumina, so much alumina, so much silica, let's say calcium or magnesium or sodium, and then you can start. Well, that's what I did. So that, and I'm already with it involved for 9 years. And this is the logic. This is called a phase diagram. And now you start, maybe, what's going on here? Well, it's not too complicated. I try to explain it. What you actually see is a line blend. You all know what a line blend is. Yeah? You have A and you have B, and here's 100% A and 0% B, and then they shift. Okay, so this is only A and this is only B and all in between mixtures. That's clear. Okay. Then you have the temperature, right, on both sides. That's simple as well. And then let's say that A melts at 1300 degrees Celsius and B melts at 1500 degrees Celsius. So what do we expect? That's sort of logical, right? You add more B, so the temperature goes up. Well, that would indicate that half-half would be about 1400 degrees Celsius. But actually, it is 1280. How come? Because this is the logic. Here, about 70-30, you get the optimum combination. If I go higher, the temperature goes up. If I go lower, the temperature goes up. And exactly on this point, it happens. That is what is called a eutectic mixture. So I'm using these mixtures, because there are many phase diagrams, thousands. And some works for glazes, some don't. And I use those to find out what kind of glaze comes out. And here you see an actual example, how it can turn out. So this is A and this is B, and these are mixtures of A and B. And here is the best melting mixture. It's all, the images are clear enough, I assume. Huh? And what you can also see is also the most shiniest. It's not only melting well, it's also the most shiniest. It's the least subjected to crystallization, because the more I move away from this ideal point, besides melting, crystals are formed. So we cannot only use this information to develop shiny glazes, but also matte glazes by just deviating from the ideal composition. That's now it's getting very interesting, right? Yeah. So what you see here is a mixture of 50% quartz and 50% whiting. And what we do add is kaolin. So what is the consequence of this logic? Here you can see that kaolin is actually a flux. In the sense that by adding more kaolin, it melts better. Up to the point I add too much kaolin, then the opposite happens. And this is the core, this is the nature of glazes. This is how glazes work. And here you can see the the composition. We see very little alumina and it's getting higher and higher and higher and higher and higher and higher, and at a certain point it's getting too high, right? So around 14% is ideal. And here you can see about 30% of kaolin is ideal. And this comes very close to the Chinese glazes and also to the glazes I have developed myself. So I never understood that people were always saying, well, too much kaolin, things are not melting. I have the opposite experience, because I happen to be involved with eutectic interaction. So what is interesting about it? We can create glazes with very basic ingredients, which are the largest part, make up the largest part of the earth crust. That is quartz, clay, and whiting. Adding a little bit of dolomite, we can go 2 cones lower. We get a shiny glaze at cone 7. And not only that, it's one of the most durable glazes you can imagine. It is very, very scratch resistant. It is very resistant to leaching, alkali leaching and acid leaching. These are just the best glazes that exist. So if you talk about functionality, that's it. You don't need much. In principle, you don't need any feldspar, but a little bit of feldspar, then it helps. But if you add too much nepheline cyanide of feldspar, then you get crystallization. And then grazing starts. It starts to graze. Without, nothing grazes. So it's just ideal, right? And if I just move away from this composition, I get very stable matte glazes. Not if I get too close, but move away, far away. But the interesting thing is, if you like very fancy glazes with a lot of effects, well, don't move too far away. Stay a little bit closer, because these are less stable. And then you get all kind of things going on, right? And this is another example. If you use another eutectic as a starting point, you can get even shiny glazes at 1145. This is a combination of quartz and kaolin, whiting and zinc oxide. And the combination is such that alumina and silica stays the same, only this is a high amount of zinc and this is a high amount of calcium. And here is the ideal combination, because zinc needs calcium to fuse. If there's no calcium, it doesn't do anything. But in combination, because of eutectic interaction, it melts like hell, right? And if I move away a little bit from it, I get matte glazes. So that's a little bit the logic. And I could have, if I knew that when I was a student, I could have created a similar glaze at 1190. Right? So once firing and mid-range temperature works perfectly for functional wear. You don't even need a frit. Okay, so that's one of the ways to save the planet. Because it saves a lot of energy, right? And plus, again, you don't need a lot of materials which are very rare or have a lot of environmental consequences when they are harvested. I don't know, the mined. Yeah? Okay, so this is what I talked about when I was referring to the piece before. We have to be inventive. It's very important, but I'm afraid it's not enough. because it's also one of the reasons why we got in trouble. So how can we get out of this problem-solving cycle we are involved with already since the cognitive revolution, as Noah Harari is referring to? I don't know if any one of you have heard of this very interesting Israeli philosopher. He wrote a book, Homo Sapiens. It's a very interesting book. And he talks about that at a certain point we got into a cognitive revolution. Actually, it is we developed language and concepts. And from that time onwards, we got in trouble. Okay, so a bucket, glass of wine, and a thermostat. 20 degrees Celsius. Is it warm or is it cold? It depends, right? Yeah. If I put my hands in a bucket of water of 20 degrees Celsius in the middle of the winter outside, it feels warm. But the same 20 degrees Celsius in a hot summer day feels chilly. So that's how we operate. We don't operate through facts. Meaning is developed through relationships. We experience meaning through relationships. And it's very important to understand that. Of course, through science, we have created this understanding of facts, and science has created instruments to measure facts, but it's not how we experience it. That's why 20 degrees Celsius, it's not just something we experience. We don't experience centigrades. Let's talk about room temperature. I just Googled it. According to Wikipedia, room temperature is 21 degrees Celsius. Anyone likes red wine? If you want to be a snob, you have to, we use in Holland the Dutch word, of the French word chambreren, means get it to room temperature. Chambre is room, and it's between 15 and 18 degrees Celsius. That was considered to be, up to not that long ago, room temperature. Because the wine was in the cellar and there's 12 degrees, and that's too chilly. You don't really taste all the qualities. So they had to chambre, bring it into the room to room temperature, and then that's the ideal temperature. Nowadays we have to have a refrigerator to get it to room temperature. So how come? How come? I'm afraid there might be a link to this. We have created devices to measure heat. And somehow, well, at that point we can say, well, I feel a little bit chilly, right? Let's push, and now it feels better. Okay, so this is room temperature. But after a while, you get used to it. And then, I feel a little bit chilly. Boop, 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 goes up. The whole house, 21 degrees Celsius, right? It feels so natural, so simple, so available. But in reality, it's doing something very specifically. Our bodies are very well equipped to adjust. It takes a little bit of time, I'm afraid. It takes about 2 days, 3 days, and then our body can really adjust. But we don't allow it, because there is 20 degrees Celsius. Even more so, in the past, if you were chilly, you had to go out, chop wood, right? Now we're sitting the whole day, behind his computer. Totally inactive, and we don't have even, nowadays, you don't even have to do this anymore. Behind your computer, you can say, I want to have 22 degrees Celsius, right? So we get even more chilly. We get even more cold. I think that's one of the logic we somehow have to become aware of, is that this availability is possible, makes us do it. And because it's possible, it creates its own reality. But we are not somehow, we have also the ability to adjust and to observe. It's a state of mind. The average energy consumption of households in the Netherlands in the last 3 years has dropped to late level of the late 1980s. What happened? We had the Putin madness. All of a sudden, gas was very expensive, and the Dutch government, the prime minister, asked everyone, please wear a sweater and just put 1 degree lower your thermostat. And within no time, the energy consumption dropped tremendously. So it's just few things we have to do. And that's I think, it's symbolizing the situation within. But it's so complicated. And why is it complicated? Because we have adopted a system which is about the opposite. Whatever I want, whatever I feel is the center of the world, and everything is made possible. Of course you need some money, but then everything is possible. And I think that's one of the basic circles we are in. So sometimes it might be that what I want is maybe not the center of the world. It's maybe a little more sharing and understanding a process which is beyond my expectations. So, because this is the issue, I was talking about saving the earth. Well, one very positive aspect to all this is something very simple. We need the earth. The earth doesn't need us. So, if we don't change, that's it, right? The earth continues. Maybe even only bacteria survive. And then they just start to do their thing like millions of years ago. And then maybe another million of years ago, the first creatures start to crawl around, of the plants grow, right? It will continue. So it is in our interest. It's in that sense very simple. Okay, but I want to keep it also very practical. So I'm going to make a resume. Glazes and footprint. So if you do these 11 things, I think you do already a little bit reducing of footprint. So your kiln should be well insulated, right? And fueled by renewable energy. I don't know if it exists in Denmark, I'm almost sure, but you can, in the Netherlands we have these energy companies who, hello? Hello? Yeah. Who offer energy which is produced only through solar or wind energy. So there's no mix. It's a little more expensive, but you are sure that all the electricity you're using is green. So maybe that's something you can do. So you have your electric kiln, or maybe wood kiln, but that has some consequences as well, of course. And then have pure, only renewable energy-based energy sources. Single firing, that's clear by now. Well considered firing cycle. On some spots you can go very fast, and other spots you have to go slower, where it's needed, and then you can go fast again, and that saves a lot of energy. Mid-temperature range for functional wear, okay, that's clear. Or if mechanical strength is important, especially if you use white clay bodies, you usually need mid-range temperature, otherwise they are extremely fragile. And as we talked about, galleries don't like that idea, that things break without, in no time. But if you use earthenware clay, quite often they can be quite strong at very low temperatures, as some of the projects have shown. Locally mined ingredients, ideal. I'm afraid in the Netherlands we don't have that much locally mined ingredients which work for high temperatures, but maybe in Denmark, I don't know. But only, of course, if they are mined ecologically. If they make a mess out of it, it's in the end not working neither, okay? Limit the use of materials which have a long-lasting harmful effect on life. I'm afraid that's the tricky one. So things that are like cobalt, or zinc, copper. So it's reducing already, huh? So of course we're living in a free country, in a free world, so you can choose, but at least be aware of it. If you use a lot of clay and quartz and whiting, that stuff is everywhere, huge amounts. You have to make a lot of pots to get it. And clay is formed every second. It is a natural process which continues. It's not the only problem is very white, pure white clay, like kaolin. That's sooner or later you're gonna finish that as well, because nature takes a long time for that to generate that. But still, it's produced. So, but we use it for a lot of stuff, and not only for glazes. Use eutectic mixtures as a starting point. Well, so you have to be a little patient, because as soon as my book is finished, there will be a lot of recipes and a lot of explaining and how you can use it. I think, I'm not totally sure, but I don't think glazed frits are very environmental, but it's a very complicated matter, because but materials have to be transported to a factory, they have to grind it, mix it, fire to a high temperature, cool it, mix it again in sacks, bring it to different places. So if you want to fire low temperature, very easily melting glazes, frits are necessary. You can maybe use salt, sodium bisilicate, for instance, but it's not really stable. The glaze matrix is not really stable. It needs a round cone, let's say 1080, 1100, and then it works. Not for functional wear though, but for sculpture pieces. You get very bright colors, and you can fire to cone 10, and it stays perfectly. Very bright copper blue, for instance. Brush application. You don't need more glaze than actually needed for one piece. You don't need a compressor, you don't need a spraying booth, you don't need pistol. a lot of waste, right? Of course, for functional wear, dipping, although of course then you are sort of limited to a certain glaze. Anyway, these are because it's a pity to waste a lot of glaze materials. I can continue a little bit more, but these are the major things. I think if you follow that, you can leave here with a good. Okay. Okay. Thank you.